Hearing music. People hear music just as they sometimes hear voices. And though there is a hearing voices network to help people frightened by voices, there is no hearing music network. And this is because the experience is usually so wonderful they need no help. From Light, 1893, page 161. The percipient almost felt himself dying, because it generated a state of ecstasy unbearable for a mortal fibre. He got up, walked, climbed the stairs, left his house, trying in different ways to free himself from the ecstatic fascination. But the music followed him everywhere, from time to time, throughout the whole day. He expresses himself as follows. The air seemed saturated with music, which overcame all the other noises. Invading infinite space, it seemed incredible to me that the others did not perceive it. At first my friend thought he was the victim of a kind of self-hypnosis phenomenon, but little by little, and for different reasons, he convinced himself that on these occasions he was indeed entering into relation with the spiritual spheres from which all harmony comes. So wonderful is celestial music that composers can spend their entire lives trying to recapture it, and our video of Pete Townshend of The Who provides an example. But not all heard music is from the light side. It can also be just as fascinating and effective, but a product of the powers of darkness. And we have a video from Black Sabbath that shows that they tapped into the seam of the realm of darkness, where they found the Devil's Interval. The music sent to the dying. This same comforting and beautiful music has been heard by many people who are about to die. For example, D. Scott Rogo, A Casebook of Otherworldly Music. Mrs. Edith Ventress wrote on November the 28th, 1968, My father, Arthur James Hill of Roadwater Farm, Washford, Somerset, as he lay dying on July the 18th, 1939, asked my mother and me, "Where is the music coming from?" Hearing nothing, we suggested it was our neighbour's radio. With a smile of great sweetness and wisdom, he shook his head and said, "No, it isn't that." This was perhaps at 10 a.m, and he ceased to breathe about 5 p.m. Music sent unexpectedly and captured in a song. The second video in the playlist, Hearing Music, called The Inspiration of Robert Dann, shows that musical inspiration in the form of a heard melody can strike at any time, walking your dog or being in nature. And many other examples of this type exist. For example, Anita O'Sullivan Beer became a musician and composer in the early 1900s, and she reported in the Occult Review of March 1921, "A few years ago I was in Paris, and one evening at sundown I went to the Madeleine Church. There were no more than a dozen believers, and I knelt next to a woman who had a basket of vegetables. Suddenly I heard a very melodious song, consisting of voices alone, but I couldn't determine its origin. It was a melody that seemed to form on the spot and rise in wide harmonic volutes, filling the sacred atmosphere. A very beautiful voice, full of feeling, dominated the others by extending the last notes of each cadenza. Not being able to orient myself, I asked the woman, my neighbour, where this song came from. She looked at me with astonishment and replied in French, "Excuse me, madam, what music do you hear? Here, can't you hear this choir?" She shook her head and said, "Madam, I can't hear anything." She soon left and another woman knelt next to me. I took the opportunity to ask her the same question. She simply answered, "There is no music." As such, inspiring locations and being in nature seem to be very conducive to hearing celestial music. But another activity that produces musical inspiration is dreaming, and as long as the composer has a way of recording the inspiration, as Paul McCartney did, it can become a song. Paul McCartney and Yesterday. The music for Paul McCartney's song Yesterday came to him in a dream, and it was a complete song.
The song. I dreamed it. So, I just woke up one morning, what is that?
When you dreamed it, could you hear the chords as well as the melody?
And
which is the key things to the harmony, aren't they?
yeah. I don't know how they came. I don't think I dreamed, oh yeah, that's F sharp.
Music heard but not captured. Sadly, many people who are neither musicians or composers hear music, and as a consequence, it never gets captured or identified. D. Scott Rogo, A Casebook of Otherworldly Music, case number 21, from Barbara Haslam, November the 19th, 1968, Chatham, England. I woke from sleep on the morning of May the 19th, 1905, at about 5 a.m. I lay there on my bed awake, and then I heard a lovely horn sounding, starting low, then going higher. This happened 3 times. Then choral singing, with lovely music started, the nicest I have ever heard. It did not last for long. I should say about 2 minutes or so. But this highlights one of the problems of heard music. Is it an existing song or something completely new? And is this a telepathic communication when one person actually hearing the song, or is it really celestial music? Hearing music when deaf. Beethoven was not the only composer to hear music, even though he was deaf, but he is perhaps the most famous. Around 1796, aged 26, Beethoven began to lose his hearing. A letter to his brothers records his thoughts of suicide due to his growing deafness, and records his resolution to continue living for and through his art. Over time, his hearing loss became profound. There is a well-attested story that at the end of the premiere of his 9th Symphony, he had to be turned around to see the tumultuous applause of the audience. Hearing nothing, he wept. Beethoven composed his string quartets, Opus 18, all his symphonies, all his piano sonatas like the Pathétique and Moonlight Sonata, and the sonatas for cello and piano when he was deaf. As such, practically all his output was music he had heard in his mind as he was out walking and was destined never to physically hear. Brahms. The composer Johannes Brahms used to actually ask for spiritual help before composing. Dr. Yvonne Casson, Farther Shores. I immediately feel vibrations that thrill my whole being. These are the spirit illuminating the soul, power within, and in this exalted state I see clearly what is obscure in my ordinary moods. Then I feel capable of drawing inspiration from above, as Beethoven did. Those vibrations assume the forms of distinct mental images after I have formulated my desire and resolve in regard to what I want, namely, to be inspired, so that I can compose something that will uplift and benefit humanity, something of permanent value. Straight away the ideas flow upon me, and not only do I see distinct themes in my mind's eye, but they are clothed in the right forms, harmonies and orchestration. Measure by measure, the finished product is revealed to me when I am in those rare, inspired moods. Berlioz. Hector Berlioz, 11th of December 1803 to the 8th of March 1869, was a composer, musician, singer, conductor and poet, born in France at La Côte Saint-André in the department of Isère near Grenoble. And not only did he hear music, it came so fast and was so constant he had difficulty recording it all. Berlioz Memoirs. My head seemed ready to burst with the pressure of my seething thoughts. No sooner was one piece sketched than another presented itself. Finding it impossible to write fast enough, I adopted a sort of shorthand. Every composer knows the anguish and despair occasioned by forgetting ideas which one has not had time to write down, and which thus escape forever. Berlioz heard his music on a vast scale. He specified huge orchestral forces for some of his works, and conducted several concerts with more than 1,000 musicians. The concept of the fifth dimension, celestial music, Schumann, resonance, and the polyphon. And so we get to our final video. In this we not only provide yet more examples of those who hear celestial music, but advance a theory on what they may be hearing. It involves the sky and resonance. And we use the polyphon to demonstrate what may be happening. A final thought from Richard Wagner. A. Abel talks with great composers, 1905, Richard Wagner. I am convinced that there are universal currents of divine thought vibrating the ether everywhere, and that anyone who can feel these vibrations is inspired, provided he is conscious of process. I believe, first of all, that it is this universal vibrating energy that binds the soul of man to the almighty central power from which emanates the life principle to which we owe our existence. This energy links us to the supreme force of the universe, of which we are all a part. That trance-like condition, which is the prerequisite of all true creative effort, I feel that I am one with this vibrating force, that it is omniscient, and that I can draw upon it to an extent that is limited only by my own capacity to do so.